and welcome to the Bucket List Show. I'm Tammy Crandall with Journey Adventure Travel and Tours and Barron Real Estate, and I am joined today
with Rebecca Denise from Superior Storage and Barron Real Estate.
Of course, we are here to help you, our community members, fill your bucket so you can live your most abundant life. And that varies for so many people. It could be something as simple as, riding a jet ski for the first time.
We're going to Hawaii.
Yeah, going to Hawaii, which we continually bring back up.
We do.
You're going to hear that until she goes.
I got to leave that out there.
That's right, that's right. Or it could even be, that you're buying your first home, or maybe you're interested in becoming an investor in real estate, those types of things. So we'll bring up a variety of content to cover such things today. So today's show, we're actually focused on the real estate side of things.
The real estate market.
Yes,
a fun
the real estate
topic.
market, it is. So you want to share with us, Rebecca, what we're starting with?
So compared to last year, and then even if we go all the way back to 2020 to now, the market has adjusted. It is definitely a buyer's market.
Absolutely.
You're not seeing what you were seeing during the pandemic, with everyone, flooding to Florida, but also shifting everywhere else in the country. People were putting in multiple bids, prices were being driven up higher. So, one price gets driven up higher than the next one is, and it compounds because then the appraisers take that higher value and everything shifted up. But compared to today is a buyer's market. So what that means to you, if you're going to buy a house, that means you'll have a little bit more option. You'll have a little bit more breathing room.
Right.
But if you're trying to sell your home, it's much more competitive. There's not as many buyers, so that means your house may be on the market longer.
That's true.
So it's not going to be quick. You're not going to see multiple offers. You're not going to see the price being driven up. If anything, you're going to see that buyers may ask for a little bit more concessions. But it will be a different market than it was.
Right. So if we were to break that down for some of the people that are listening or watching, let's talk a little bit about that, how that is affecting the buyer and the seller, if we can.
So the buyer is going to look to see what is out there. So they're going to have more options to look at a property and then maybe look at 2, 3, or 4. And then they can make their decision. So it's less stressful from the buyer. So they have a little bit more opportunity to work with their realtor, work with their bank, and get all their ducks in a row. Compared to 2020, if you looked at a house, you're either putting a bid on it before or right when you're there, because everybody was doing the same thing. There wasn't as much inventory, so people were looking at the prices.
That's right.
So from a seller standpoint today, it's nothing compared to 2020.
Right, and we were discussing earlier, that back in 2022, the average time that a house sat on market was 30 to 45 days.
Wow.
You put it up, and in 30 days, you were closing. And it was just insane. It was like a frenzy. So now, fast forward, here we are to 2025. The market has softened quite a bit. If you have your home priced where it should be priced in the market to be competitive to sell, those homes are sitting on the market on average 6 months. If you've got your house priced far higher, and there are statistics out there that as evidence of that through our realtors organization, that a lot of these homes are 100, 125 over where they should be, and that itself is driving those homes to sit on market for 12 months, 13 months. That is a long time to have your house up for sale.
And it is. It impacts the sellers. It impacts the whole industry, but that becomes the advantage to the buyer.
It does. It does.
So, they could go in to that house that's maybe not priced right, and, if it's a good realtor, they're going to adjust it. People are going to negotiate. But if they don't understand the market, that's why it's going to sit there. And that's really the reason why you want someone on your real estate team that understands the market, knows how to price correctly, and then market correctly versus having it sit there on the market months.
Right, and buyer's agents are now more important than ever for people who are looking to purchase. there have been some regulatory changes.
Yep.
There's an agreement that legally has to be signed now. If you are looking at homes that are listed on the MLS, and I understand that, you know, there are homes listed on Realtor.com and on Zillow and all these
Yeah.
other places, and you can see them. But if you'll notice, if you scroll down into the description of some of these properties, they're MLS listings. So those MLS listings, you can't just walk into a buyer's
Right,
home.
right.
You know, a contract has to be signed with a buyer's agent.
Correct.
And, you know, so that way you're prepared as to what the expense
Right.
would be.
And from a buyer's perspective, you know, spring is normally the busiest time. So this is the time that you want to meet with your agent, get your pre-approval, find out your needs analysis, and then that's where you're going to start with an agent. But the idea that you don't have to rush like 2020, and just to tag back off what you said, so the idea that you're going to sign a buyer's agreement with the agent, that secures you and says that agent is working for you. They're going to represent you monetarily on your pricing and steer the whole thing and work with your team so you get what you want. So, you know, they're going to work with your
Right.
bank, and they're going to work with your appraiser, your home inspector, and that's what a buyer's agents do.
Well, and just, you know, just to reiterate, because we don't want to mislead in,
Right.
in any way, you know, a buyer's agent, whether you're a selling agent or a buyer's agent, here in the state of Florida, we really are defined as transaction brokers here. Or transaction agents.
Right.
And what that means is our job is to make sure that we have a nice, smooth transaction that is fair and equitable to both sides of the transaction.
Right.
Okay? So it's great to have a buyer's agent represent you.
Correct.
But at the same time, understand that they're working for the transaction. That could mean that their negotiating skills are going to be superbly important for you.
Correct.
You know, if you don't have a buyer's agent that can work on the negotiations, work out the numbers, that could be to your disadvantage. Same thing on the seller side.
Absolutely.
If you as a seller have a listing agent who is, for lack of a better way to say it, a yes man or a yes woman, and they'll just post it up for whatever you tell them
Right.
to, that may not be in your best interest as a seller, especially if you've got some time constraints. Maybe you've got a job change
Yeah, relocation.
that you have coming. And, you know, if you know that you need to get your house off the market in a certain period of time, having that priced appropriately is going to be so important.
Absolutely.
You know, that's super, super important. So it's not just you know, agents work very diligently and hard for their clients.
And there's a lot more to it than just showing the house. They were saying for this year, most of the properties that were listed in December, we had the highest ratio that they removed the listing. And that
Yes.
could have been for maybe it was priced too high, maybe their listing agreement expired, maybe they wanted to wait till spring. So now's the time for spring. So if you're selling your home, now's the time that you want to start doing your homework and getting it back on the market.
Absolutely.
And if you're buying a home, now's the time to get aligned with the realtor, Tammy, and then start putting it into motion. You know, there is some incentives out there, maybe from the builders, new construction. I know in a couple weeks, Tammy and I are going to be doing a tour of the new construction, so we'll be
That's
able
true.
to share that. But, you know, there's different needs on both sides. So if you're a seller or a buyer, you know, you're going to see different things.
And there are still some options out there for those of you who prefer to pick up a vacation home or have a secondary home that you can use to put up on Vrbo or Airbnb and use those as seasonal properties. That's a huge opportunity here in Florida. You know, so if you've got equity in your property that you want to use towards those things, we've got partners that we work with in the industry that can help you with that sort of thing. I was on a wonderful tour, last tour of homes we did at our Brokers Open last Thursday was quite amazing. It was great to be able to get in there and see the different condos that are available in our area here on the Treasure Coast. Some of them were on the lower end of the spectrum, some of them on the higher end of the spectrum, but they all showed very, very well and were ideal properties for someone who could either stay there year round if they're minimizing or downsizing their home. and want to be in a place where you don't have to take care of the lawn and all that craziness. Or it was some of these had ideal spaces for people who are vacationing here on a short-term basis. So the opportunity for investors to be able to do that, because we are not short, I can't speak for Rebecca, but we have not been short here in our area of people visiting.
Oh, no, it's, well, the funny thing for Treasure Coast, so even though we talk about inventory, Treasure Coast, the 3 counties in this area, their prices actually went up by 3% on average. People are still coming to Florida. They're still coming to Treasure Coast. In Port St. Lucie today, because of the volume that has come to this area, they actually have a new school that's opening. It's within Tradition, where one of the big heavy areas people are flocking to. It's from K1 to 8th grade, but it just shows you how much their infrastructure's changing, the schools they're growing. So they're growing side by side, which is nice.
It is.
Especially, there's nothing better than a new school and a new neighborhood. So we are still having, spring breaks like all the time here, it seems. We're seeing people all the time. If I run into someone at the storage facility, they're snowbirds. So, they may be here for a couple months, or maybe they have some business. We also see a lot of buy and sell. With, renovation is still a big process. So that's another option. And then obviously all the loan programs are still out there. Fort Pierce just had a $15,000 grant. So there's always things that the realtor could help find you, poke around with too, if you're a buyer. As far as rates, we're averaging probably around 6.71. So it's not horrendous. If we were in 1981, it would have been 18%. But if we go back to when COVID happened.
Yeah, we can speak to that, can't we?
Yeah, I know, 1981, it's crazy. But in 2020, we did see, 3 3/8. That was obviously a great rate, but we were in a totally different market.
Absolutely.
You can't even compare what happened there because it's unprecedented. But so, we're a little bit lower than we were last year. 2023, we were 7%. But when you meet with your bank and your realtor and your whole team, there is options to buy down that rate. There could be maybe some seller concession. I know one of our big builders, Lennar, around here, they put out in the news that they have given so many incentives that it meets what happened in 2009. And 2009 is when we came out of the crisis of 2008. So there's always like something that's, attracting the market or deterring the market, but you just need to get your information. But it's still a great time to buy, and it's still a great time to list your property. People are still moving and things are changing.
Well, and they are. Where I live, I don't live so far. I live in the southwest end of St. Lucie. And so, we're in the height of season, and the traffic reflects that. And not only the traffic, but the growth out in that area, which includes, Tradition and that whole section there on the west end. The amount of growth or opportunity for existing homes for resales, as well as for new homes going up in different neighborhoods that are taking place out there, just unbelievable to me.
The last I knew, I think there was, I estimated around 40,000 permits for Port St. Lucie, the Tradition area. And that's why there's a new school opening today. There'll be 2 more coming. So they are balancing that.
Well, and a good point too, a lot of times the real question is, okay, so all these things are growing, you've got homes coming here, you've got schools coming here, where are people going to work? So that's a real question and a very valid question. Well, growth begets growth. Right. So there are a lot of people that are entrepreneurial, that are moving here, starting their businesses here, or bringing their businesses here to be able to employ people who are moving here. So all of that growth is happening in tandem. If you just looking up and down what I call the Gatlin Corridor.
Yeah, that's so busy.
The Gatlin Corridor. There are plazas with all types of different shops and restaurants and just
It's like
it's the
every corner is
insanity.
almost like a little downtown.
Doctors' practices.
Yeah, well,
and,
you know, as far as the jobs, like I'm in Sebastian. So Sebastian is, you know, 28,000 people. It's a smaller town, but we could see the growth there too. And it's beautiful, just as beautiful as the Treasure Coast. But I was in Stewart earlier today. Now we have a brand new Costco opening up that's going to drive employment. We have additional hospital that's come into the area and medical center, so that drives employment. But we do have some big box office, Amazon, Chewy, FedEx is over there. So, you know, we have some corporate centers for some of these larger employees. And then in today's world, people still can work remotely.
That's true.
So we do see a little bit of shift. And then, you know, it's still a great market to buy and invest. You know.
And then on both ends of the spectrum, if we were to take Port St. Lucie and they're smack dab in the middle of things, you still have the opportunity to work outside of your space.
Correct.
Within 45 minutes to an hour south, 45 minutes to an hour north, and or west even. Even the west is seeing some growth.
Oh yeah, definitely. But you know, we have 95, we have the Turnpike, so I mean, traveling is a little congested when the snowbirds are here, but that's okay. It's to be tolerated because that drives business and everything else for us all. But I definitely do think that people are, you know, going to the outskirts as well.
Of course,
you know, you're definitely seeing it in Okeechobee. Bass just announced probably like a year ago that they're going to make one of their resorts in Okeechobee. So that was pretty neat. So I had did a sales call at Bass Store just to get more information about it, and they're selling travel packages. So, you know, for $140, you could go to Tennessee and see the resort. So obviously it will drive something back here to Okeechobee. But, you know, Okeechobee Lake, that whole area is one of the biggest fishing and hunting areas in
And
Florida,
it's attracting.
probably.
We're finding, too, there are a lot of first-time home buyer families that are finding homes that fit within the price points that they need in areas like Okeechobee or Sebastian.
Yeah, you just
or
closed a
Miko.
transaction in Sebastian.
That's right. And you know, and I'm working on, you know, trying to get one closed out in Okeechobee.
Good. Yeah, no.
So, and these are nice, good, solid homes.
Right, yeah.
You know, at an affordable price for that first-time home buyer. Maybe it's their first home to get them set.
And you know, you got to look, so the first-time home buyer, I know I helped Tammy with it, but it was a house in Sebastian, 250, 2.2. She negotiated a new roof on the house, so it paralleled with whatever was needed in the insurance. So the deals are out there. You just have to have an agent help you find it. And you know, Sebastian's 35 minutes away, but you could see that if you go west to Okeechobee. Hope Sound is building.
Absolutely.
Even on the island, Hutchison Island, north and south. I mean, the amount of building is it's just still happening.
Well, and you know, we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Journaventure Travel and Tours, where it's about your journey, not just the destination. Picture a world full of amazing places yet to be discovered. Where do you begin? Whether your bucket list includes cruising in the Caribbean, exploring vast nature in Alaska, or experiencing exotic worldwide places, we're here to help you fill your bucket to live your most abundant life. Your journey begins from the moment you let go and let us handle the details for you. So call us today, Journaventure Travel and Tours, 772-882-3165.
Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Denise from the Bucket List Show, as well as with Superior Storage and Barron Real Estate. I am with my co-host, Tammy.
Hello.
So we're going to continue. So Tammy, if I was going to buy, what would I do first if I wanted to buy a home?
Well, first you got to find a good buyer's agent.
Right.
You got to find a good buyer's agent, and any good buyer's agent worth their grain of salt is going to have an amazing team that they surround themselves with. And when I talk about an amazing team to surround yourselves with, we're talking about great lenders, a variety of options of lenders. So we're talking bank lenders, mortgage broker lenders, because everybody has a different way of being able to borrow.
Correct.
You know, some people are perfect for the bank lending side and some are not. And a lot of times what people don't realize is it's the property type you're buying too. It's
Right.
going to determine what's going to be a better lender for you. There are so many things. Now, it's great to want to go out there. If you've got cash, I mean, we'll always take you out there with cash.
Cash is nice.
You know, is nice, but I would say the bulk of our buyers are borrowing something, even if they have cash to put down. But putting that cash down doesn't necessarily guarantee you the ability to get them to accept your offer.
Right.
So having some strong power in your pocket, which means having that pre-approval before you start, making sure that they know for sure when you come to them and you're serious about buying that house, you got to make sure your offer is ready and
Right.
buttoned up tight.
Right.
So that's making sure. So that's one partner.
Right, and the pre-approval tells, so when you want to buy a house, you just don't walk in and say, oh, I want to buy a house. You know, if a house is on the market and there's an open house, you're in a much better position having a buyer's agent. And the idea about the pre-approval, what that means is that you met with someone on that team and you met with the lender and they went through your credit, your income, and they say, yes, you're pre-approved, which means that that bank will lend money to you. So then when the agent jumps in, you have and you make an offer, it's viable. All your ducks are in a row.
And
then
sometimes that can make the difference between a
absolutely.
seller accepting your offer and not. Every buyer that I take to the table, when we make an offer, we have got the pre-approval letter in hand with something that will substantiate that their financials have already been reviewed.
Right.
Their stuff is solid. The monies for down payments have been verified and that they are a solid buyer for that seller.
Right, and the banks do their homework, so they're looking at the credit.
And it doesn't matter, let's talk about that. It doesn't matter whether they're doing FHA,
Right.
VA lending, conventional lending, private lending. All of those things we're going to make sure are verified. You know, some people are of the misnomer that closing a VA loan is harder, closing an FHA loan is harder. This is what these people do.
Right, yeah.
This is what they do.
and-
So they have got it buttoned up tight. It's to protect the buyer,
Right.
to protect the sale. So
And,
we'll do
and
them all.
a good agent would let you take a VA loan or FHA loan. And even on the listing side, unless there's something immediately glaring, there's no reason, loan limits, those things apply, but the VA loan is viable. I've done
That's right.
thousands, the FHA is too.
True.
So these are good options, and we want people to take advantage. That's why the government created these programs and these agencies, so everyone has an option, especially our veterans.
That's right.
And that's key for both of us. So now we have the buyer's agent, we have our pre-approval.
Right,
What's
you've
next?
got your pre-approval, and even, I just want to take a little bit of a step back, and then even before that pre-approval, if you haven't looked at your credit bureau in a while,
Yep.
maybe you should, make sure that there aren't things on there that shouldn't be there, especially if you're, prepping yourself to buy.
Correct.
It could be that maybe you haven't looked at your credit bureau in a year, you jump on there and something you paid off months and months and months ago is still sitting there showing as money's owed. All of that is going to affect your ability to borrow, and could affect, your point structure, could affect how much the loan is going to cost you.
Right.
So very important that you do that.
Right.
The other thing is, make sure that you have money set aside. So the next thing is, and I would say maybe it's not the next thing, really should have been the pre-thing, okay? And that is, you're going to need money to pay closing costs. You're going to need money for earnest money
The
to
down
put down
payment,
on
yep.
the offer and for down payment. Even if you take advantage of some of these programs that are out there, they're not all 100% programs. They may require 3.5% for you to put down. Well, depending on the home you're looking at, that could be a pretty good chunk of
Right.
change.
Right.
So you really got to take what I consider to be a real look.
Right.
You
And
know.
When just kind of to recap that. So when you meet with your agent and you're getting the pre-approval, you know, the monetary part is important because when you start negotiating to put something down, let's say you're a VA buyer, it's 100% financing, you really want this house, the realtor could say it's 100% financing, you don't need a down payment, but we're going to give them a $2,000 payment just in good faith because you really want that property. It's still 100% financing and you get the $2,000 back. So those are things that are discussed when you meet with your agent. Maybe you don't put anything down, but the cash and the pre-approval will help the agent negotiate whatever you want.
That's right.
And the next
Now,
step.
there are some assistance programs out there for specific qualifiers that can help you with down payments, that can assist you, you know, with some closing costs. And then, you know, I know previous to the break, we discussed that we had talked about concessions or that are available that the sellers may make if they're really wanting to sell the home for the price that they're wanting to sell it for. They may make a decision to pay half your closing cost,
Correct.
you know, or a portion of that. They may pick up the cost of title. You know, I would just caution you, don't be too greedy. You know, because, you know, it is a negotiating point.
Correct.
And so how are we going to know? How are we going to know? And I say this very tongue-in-cheek. How are we going to know that the amount that we're offering on that home is the right amount to offer? How are we going to know that? Well, let's see. You work with your agent, whether it's a buyer's agent, you know, and that buyer's agent really should be doing a CMA before you make any offer on a home. And a CMA, for those of you who are out there or not, it's called a comparative market analysis, and it basically just picks up the different items or the homes that have been selling within the area that you're looking to buy that home. So you get a better snapshot of, is the home going to come in at the value that it claims to? Is what you're offering an insult to the seller because you've offered so low in comparison to what they can actually get for the home that you may not have a chance.
Right.
So.
And that is key because, you know, if you're buying a house, Tammy will do the comparable analysis beforehand. The reason for that is if you're buying the house for $200, you want to make sure it is worth $200.
That's correct.
Because then it goes to the appraiser. On the other side of the coin, so if you have your property listed and you're at 60 days, 90 days, and you keep on moving up, that may be a time to revisit and speak with your agent to say, let's do an analysis, what's going out there. Or the agent may do that to share with the seller because there does need to be a price adjustment.
Sure.
So it's different on both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
But the advantage is you're not in a rush like you were in 2020.
Well, and a good seller's agent is always open. If we're jumping to the seller side, you know, a good seller's agent is going to make sure that they are wide open to input from those realtors who have been in to visit the place.
Correct.
You know, what is it that puts it at the value they think it might be at? What was their feedback from their clients if they chose not to purchase that particular home? It could have been, you know, the layout of the home. It may not be that they didn't like the home. It just liked another home better.
Right. Yeah. There's so many variables.
You know, but you know, as a seller's agent or a listing agent, you know, we should be listening to the input of our fellow realtors and the prospective clients that they bring to the table.
Absolutely. So if we go back to buyers.
Yes, and we will.
So now you're you have everything set. You could start looking at homes with your agent, and the agent in most cases will send you a list daily of what's new in the market, what may have had a price adjustment, and they're going to do that based on your parameters. So the needs analysis.
Well, and that's exactly it. You know, your buyer's agent should have had some form of consultation with you to understand, you know, what are your absolute must-haves in a home.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, is it about the size of your kitchen? Is it a particular thing in a bathroom? Is it that you must have a pool on the property?
Right.
It must be a cement pool in the ground on the property. You know, and you want it to be a certain size. You don't want rooms smaller than 12 by 12. You know,
Right.
you know, you want it to have a 3-car garage versus a 2-car garage, all of those things
And those
make a
variables
difference.
make a difference, and it could be an HOA. So that's where, the good buyer's agent's going to come in. They're going to be able to filter and get that and send you a list. You don't have the means to see 100 houses, but maybe, you see 10 this weekend, 5, or however that number works. But, when you look at the houses, you want to keep track too, because then it gets very confusing.
It does.
At least I would forget what I looked at.
Well, and I always when I take buyers out, I usually take out a sheet for them.
Yeah.
And a sheet for myself.
Yeah.
And that way they can make notes on the home that they were in. I strongly encourage that, because when you're shopping for a home, you are looking. A lot of times, you're not going to see the very first one and fall in love with
Right.
it. Sometimes it happens,
Yeah.
But not all the time.
Then you
And
see the
so-
second and third, and you're like,
Yeah.
But it's it's the biggest transaction they're going to have, so you don't want to rush, and that's why you need a good, solid team.
Yeah, yeah. Now, there are some things, now you've got to that point, you found the house that you want, you're going to make an offer, right?
Correct.
So your agent should be working with you to provide an offer that is competitive. And that really has a lot to do with, how desperate are you to get in the home? How badly do you want the home that you just saw
Right.
and that you want to make an offer on? Some people are not in a hurry for
Correct.
that. They'll take their time with it. But then some people, maybe they need to get out of their rental in 2 months, and they really need to get a home bought.
Yeah, the timing, that's hard, especially when it's happened simultaneously. But that's where, again, a good agent can monitor the dates.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talked earlier about, partners, having good
Yeah.
partners. Your buyer's agent should have them. So having, people set aside for inspections. We keep track of when the appraisals are getting done. We're staying on top of a lot of pieces. That includes having conversations with your mortgage holder to make sure that everything is in order and coming together. That did the appraisal come in at the values it should have? Did the inspection bring up anything that needs to be addressed so we don't put that transaction at risk?
Correct. Yeah.
For you. And sometimes we're going back and forth a lot. A lot of people don't realize what goes on behind the scenes.
Right. Yeah, because behind the scenes, you're going to prepare the offer, so the buyer has to accept it. You're going to collect whatever money, down payment.
And sometimes we're negotiating
Yeah,
back and forth
right,
several
and
times.
you're still working with the lender, because maybe you have your pre-approval at 205 and now it's 200. So all those things have to be adjusted, but again, with the strong buyer's agent, they're going to, monitor you and share the stages. Everything is
Absolutely.
automated. Most banks, you'll get everything updated. But the idea is, it's a legal transaction, so you've got to be cognitive to all the dates, and, someone needs to drive that.
That's right.
And,
That's
and especially put the buyers at ease, because it is nerve-wracking.
Yes.
And you may not understand, but, once you get the inspection back, it all just kind of falls through.
Yeah, even when you've done it more than once, it's
Yeah.
still nerve-wracking.
Yep.
And it's because things change, processes change. Different lenders have different ways of going about things.
And everybody's doing something behind the scenes. Tammy's negotiating, the bank is prepping your loan to make it a loan-in process, collecting their fee, getting the appraiser.
Yeah.
The inspector's doing his thing, and then you have the title company, so Florida's a title state.
Yes.
They're going to check the title, make sure there's no defects. So even though it may seem quiet, it's everything's just being processed, and everybody has a part.
I was on the phone with a lender this past Saturday, and it was actually a bank lender.
Yeah,
So, I even go so far as, most, if not all of the lenders that I deal with, it doesn't matter to me whether they're brokers or they're bankers, I have their cell phones.
right.
And that's because if I have a buyer that decides they want to make an offer, and they want to make an offer that fell out of the scope of what they did before, now I'm having to reach back out to the lender and say, hey, is this even possible for them? Because I don't want to set them up for failure.
Correct.
I don't want to set up the seller on the other side for
And that's
failure.
important, because if you go and, you see a house on a Saturday afternoon, and maybe you were pre-approved for 250, but
Yeah.
you have room to go, that bank or mortgage broker needs to update that letter on a Sunday, so Tammy could attach it. So,
That's right.
that partners on demand is so key, because it really does take a team effort to
It
process
does.
it all and get you to the closing.
It does, it does. all these little processes, and these are the things that we like to do.
Yeah, you know,
We
the
love-
operation part, we like the back
You know,
operation.
you
We're
know,
both bankers, obviously.
Well, and I drive around in my car with a plate on the back that says "Home Ownership for All," and I
Aw.
really, and I do. It's the plate I pay a little extra for every year.
Yeah,
'Cause
but
I
it's
want
nice.
people, but I really do support that.
I think so,
I
too.
really believe that everybody has the ability or the possibility to own a home, and so anything that we can do to make that happen,
Yeah, and
we do our best to do that.
especially first-time home buyers, and I think that's why both of us feel strongly about the VA loans and the FHA loans. And don't get the idea that you have to have a perfect credit score. FHA is down to 580 on a credit score. So again, you meet with your agent, and all those things take into account the type of home you're going to buy, the price range, the area. So, you know, again, your first step would be to call your agent, and then the rest of the path will, you know, fall into place. Then you get to closing.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the fun part is now you've gone through everything, you're at closing day, you're ready to close. Real important that if you have set up to make deposits, that those things have come together. Your buyer's agent is going to help you with that. The seller's agent is going to be all over the title company
Right.
that we're, and title
Yep.
company is a huge part of that
Huge
for
part.
us.
It's all the legality
We
of
work
it.
with them and make sure that everything's pulled together, and then you get to move into your
You do.
house.
You get those keys.
Closing takes place on the same day most
Yep.
of the time, not always, but most of the time. We're able to do that. Here in the state of Florida, it's not uncommon because we are such a large state to have a closing take place in two pieces,
Yes.
where the seller signs their portion, a buyer signs their portion, and they don't even meet each other, to be honest with you. You know, sometimes that it just happens that way. And that's okay. Those transactions can work rather smoothly. So
And they want to make it easy for everybody.
They do.
So
They
it's
do.
not necessarily like it was 10 years ago, 10 people around the table and you're closing and passing paper. You know, now it's different. So,
Yeah.
but the idea is that you did get to closing, and you got
Yes.
your house.
And you got to move in.
And those are the things that we enjoy doing.
And don't forget your movers too. We have
And
movers too.
We have great movers, great storage facilities.
That's right.
But, you know, it's a great process. But for those of you who have been trying to sell your home and it hasn't sold, or maybe your listing agreement has expired, you know, we could represent that area just as well, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can.
And, you know, I think we're going to see more listings come on. The spring market is here. It
yeah.
follows the weather. So, you know, as it gets warmer in the Northeast, you'll start seeing more listings there, too, as well. So, you know, it's probably the biggest season of real estate.
Oh, I think so. I mean, we're not too far away. We're just a few months out
Yeah,
from
we're-
summer. It's an ideal time that if you were considering listing your home, we would love to have an opportunity
Yes.
to do that for you. So that way you're ready, especially if you were, not that I'm against 55 and over, because, you know, I'm one of those people.
Not
You know,
me, no.
I'm a 55 and over. You know, so we can help people with that as well,
Right.
who are trying to transition
Yeah.
from their northern homes to southern homes, or
Yes.
to live on both portions.
Yeah, there's-
But it's also a great time of year that if you are considering listing your home and you're in an area that is full of families, this is when families start to look.
Right.
Because they're planning, if they're going to make a move with their families, they're going to do it over the summertime. And we have people coming to our area
Right.
here from South Florida, from other states, from the north, you know, that are bringing their families as
And they
well.
tie into the school schedules.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
becomes a very generational thing.
Right.
You know, some people, it starts with one family moving to the area, and they're like, "Hey, let's check this out." And
Everybody follows.
everybody starts. Yeah, that's
I
exactly
hope
it.
so.
It becomes a migration, right?
Right, yeah. Well, that's what I'm hoping. I have one more son to get to Florida. So how would they contact you?
Well, if you want to reach me, the best way to reach me is on my cell phone, 772-579-9536. Again, I'm Tammy Crandall with Journey Venture Travel and Tours and Barron Real Estate.
Yes. I am Rebecca Denise. You can contact me at 203-482-7297. I'm with Superior Storage as well as Barron Real Estate. Be kind, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.